Nefarious Nightmare contains themes that may be explicit or triggering for some. Specific warnings and disclaimers will be mentioned in the show notes. A Nefarious Nightmare assumes all parties that are mentioned in these cases to be innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. Listener discretion is strongly advised. You can help us grow the show by leaving us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can join our Patreon for lighthearted bonus content. With this, welcome to Season 6.
Juan Leon Laureles was a kind, sweet, and quiet 30-year-old living in Central Texas when or on around May 10, 1996. He was murdered, his car set on fire, all believed to be a hate crime. In the days prior to his murder, Leon confided in coworkers that he was being harassed and stalked.
To this very day, his niece, Arlene Harbison, has been very vocal in trying to get his story told and to get justice and closure in the case of his murder. Was it perpetrated by those who hated him because he was different? Were the police aware and involved? Why can't Arlene be shown an official autopsy report? And where is all the media coverage on Leon Laureles? We attempt to figure out the answers and more in today's case. I'm Courtney Fenner.
And I'm Amanda Cronin. And A Nefarious Nightmare presents He Was My Everything. Justice for Juan Leon Laureles.
Before we get into this, I want to tell, I guess, a relatable story about my own uncle, Robert Bob Scherer. My Uncle Bob was not related to myself or my sister by blood, but he was even closer to us than our own family most of our lives. My mom moved us to Guthrie, Oklahoma for about half a year for a job my dad had gotten. This was back around when I was like 5 and my sister was 3. And my dad was absent in his own affairs, and we just never saw him. We were severely destitute, alone, living in horrific conditions in a house that felt like it would implode at any given moment. And knowing this and being pissed at my dad for not being present the entire time, my Uncle Bob would steal his mom's credit cards, road trip it to Guthrie, and fill our fridge with food, our closets with clothes, and our toy boxes with dolls. Uncle Bob would pick my sister and I up from school early on the days that were particularly rough. I mean, I was bullied throughout my entire elementary years, and he'd take us swimming out to this place in Richardson called Sugarless Delight. It's a local business, and they sold sugar-free treats that we never could tell that they were even sugar-free, or to Disney movies in the theater. We saw the likes of Cinderella and The Little Mermaid, and he'd always drive us through Burger King or McDonald's to get kids' meals. I remember being in the 3rd grade and he decided to perm my hair. He gave me a perm and I honestly hated it, but he really tried to make me an on-trend little 3rd grader at that time and attempted to get me out of the spotlight of bullies. Our fondest memories of him were held between 1988 and until 1995, and we had no idea the entire time that he was a gay man. We didn't care. It was something my mom had cleverly avoided explaining to us, until just before he had passed away due to complications from AIDS, which is the virus that's caused by HIV. Back then, we didn't understand homosexuality, and the AIDS epidemic and the stigmas attached to it, all of it was just running rampant. So with all of the love, there was also a lot of confusion, ignorance, and fear. But with that, my Uncle Bob, who I miss and think of to this very day, was one of those people who shaped me to be the individual I am today, who's especially present when I'm at events such as Pride or when I advocate for those who are persecuted for being different in any form. The reason why I'm remembering my uncle at this moment is, while speaking with Arlene, she talks of her beloved uncle, Juan Leon Laureles, who was taken from this earth under different circumstances, but listening to his story seemed to have brought my own uncle back to life, if for just a moment. It was as though my uncle was sitting right next to me, and I feel really deep within my heart that my Uncle Bob and Leon would have been the best of friends. So rest in peace, Uncle Bob, and rest in peace and injustice, Leon Laureles.
Last week, we concluded the multi-part series surrounding Mariah Gordon, who is seeking justice for Willow, who had her life stolen from her by the hands of a monster who does not even deserve the honorary title of father. We are going to travel about 186 miles north of San Antonio, where that horrific crime occurred, and about 27 years back in time to Brownwood, Texas, which is a small, conservative, and predominantly Christian town in central Texas. One thing Brownwood is known for is that it was once home to the largest military training center in Texas, called Camp Bowie. This was around during World War II, but was shut down shortly after the war ended.
Another known and unfortunate fact about Brownwood is that it is, at the very least, home to several allies of white supremacy groups. In fact, according to the Washington Post, and just 4 years prior to the murder of Juan Leon Laureles, a well-known white supremacist group planned a rally in Brownwood on the front steps of a courthouse. There were many that were angered that these individuals were given a permit to actually hold a rally, but nonetheless, it is a testament to the fact that this hate group had some friends that are quote-unquote higher up who did them favors. Fortunately, many held a counter-rally, including the predominantly black Greater Faith Community Church, to which the Klan felt inspired to add a cross lighting, which is where they light a big cross on fire. It's been said that the invitation extended to the Klan had come from several local businesses.
It's also believed that the white supremacist group also had ties to law enforcement, which has since been denied. But Leon's niece, Arlene, who we will be hearing from in just a minute, believes it to be true. She describes Leon as a reserved individual with an endearing laugh that brightened his whole face. Leon was a caregiver much of his life and enjoyed both cooking and dancing. He also deeply cherished his family and closest friends. He was known as a gentle giant, shy but sweet. His memory would remain in the hearts of many acquaintances, coworkers, and family members to this very day.
With all of this being said, we're going to give the floor to Arlene Harbison, who's Leon's niece. Please listen, remember him as the wonderful individual as he was, and please continue to keep his memory alive as we have a particular call to action after we hear from her.
My name is Arlene Harbison. I am the niece of Leon Laureles. I'm proud to say that I'm a mother of 3 sons, and I have 5 grandchildren that are my entire world. And my life basically is about them and making them happy, making great memories, just spending as much time with them as I can. I guess from, having the loss of Leon has taught me to cherish those moments and to make sure I say I love you as much as possible. I feel like I didn't get that chance with Leon, and so I've regretted it my whole life, and I'm not going to do the same thing with my grandchildren. I spend a lot of time with my grandchildren, but I also like to do crafting. I like to do reading and some artwork, and I'm just kind of a simple person. I was really shy growing up. So as I get older, I do tend to have the ability to go and meet new people, which before I was always scared. But I can do that now. And I've really enjoyed meeting a lot of the podcasters that I've reached out to. I love meeting them, and they are such wonderful people, and they've become like family to me. I'm also the type of person that I cannot see somebody in need and not stop and ask if I can do anything for them. And my whole family knows this about me. If I see a homeless person or somebody in need, I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask them what I can do to help them. And I've brought up my kids that way, and my grandchildren. They help me pack up blessing bags, and I make sure everyone has them in their cars. And in the holidays, we go out and pass those out along with blankets, beanies, gloves, that kind of stuff in the wintertime, and hand warmers. And that's just the type of person that I want to help as many people as I possibly can. And that's just who I am as a person. And Leon was exactly the same way. He was the type of person that you never had to ask him for help. He could just know and sense it, and he would be right there to help you with anything, no questions asked. And he was such a giving person. He took care of his elderly parents when they were sick. He took care of me from the day I was born. He helped me raise my children. And he was always helping his friends and coworkers, and even down to the customers have told me how much they loved him because he was so kind and so friendly, and was just a very gentle soul. And I think he passed that along to me, and I wanted to pass it along to my children as well. He was 2.5 years older than me. He was my uncle. I never really thought of him as my uncle. He was just more of like my best friend, my protector, just always there for me. It wasn't like a niece and uncle type of situation. Maybe more like a brother, but I'd say even closer than that because we did spend a lot of time together. He worked at a local grocery store called Kroger. He started working there at the graveyard shift because he would take care of my children during the day while I worked. And he just stayed on that shift after my kids got older. But every coworker has reached out and said how much they loved him and how wonderful he was, and even customers too, like I said. So, that is a testament of to who he was. This happened on May 10th, 1996, so just a little over 27 years ago. I believe that Leon was the type of person that he was a little naive because we grew up in a very small conservative Catholic town. So there was a lot of things we weren't aware of. So he was naive, and he was also like a people pleaser. So I feel like people took advantage of that. And I don't think it's anything that he brought on himself. It just happened that some person disliked him for whatever reason. And that could be because he was gay. It could also be because he was Hispanic. This town that we lived in Brownwood, was very, very racist and homophobic. And so it could possibly be a hate crime. So I don't think it was anything he did to cause this. Yeah, it was just something that, honestly, what I believe is that because he got threatened 2 weeks prior to this by a state trooper, saying that if he ever caught Leon with his son, that he would kill him. But because Leon was gay, I think they assumed that anybody he hung around with he was going to turn them gay or whatever. And so both the sheriff's son and the state trooper's son were friends with Leon. And Leon did mention that he was having people threatening him, and he didn't know why, though. So I lean towards the possibility that it was a hate crime. Could it have possibly been something he did? Because that was the first thing that the Texas Ranger, he was in charge of the investigation, that he tried to tell everyone that Leon was dealing drugs, and so he did this to himself. But everyone he spoke to said absolutely not. Leon was not doing that, and he was not that kind of person, and that's not true. And they kept trying to push that narrative, but everyone said no. So then when they would try to speak to him and explain why that wasn't possible, he would just walk off. And so they did try to make it seem like it was something he did to cause this. But when that wasn't working, then they did turn into, it could have possibly been a hate crime. But then later they turned around and said they don't have hate crimes in Brownwood, Texas. So I'm like, really? Sure. Our sheriff's department there was involved very big into what they were KKK back then, now white supremacists, whatever. And to this day, they're still trying to recruit people. They tried to recruit a police officer and he reported them. Of course, he got fired, but they are still to this day trying to recruit people like that. So not only was Leon gay, but he was Hispanic too. So, he was just hated for who he was, not anything that he did. Because last year they tried to have a Pride parade, and there was a gentleman that was trying to do a documentary on it, and you have to get permission from the sheriff's department, and he actually recorded them saying a lot of not just racist things, but about gay people, like they just all need to die and they're not welcome in their town and things like that. And it was recorded, and this was last year. It's so sad. I can only imagine how hard it was for Leon back then. It's just because we were brought up Catholic, we never spoke of it. He never came out to the family, but because I was close to him, I knew. It's just we didn't talk about it. I just knew. And at this time of his life, he didn't have to take care of anyone. So he was starting to live for himself, and he started going out and he started meeting people and he started dating. And then this happened. So it makes me really sad because he didn't get to enjoy the things that everyone else gets to enjoy, falling in love and getting married, having children and things like that when he was just starting his life. I kind of do want to add, the person that was there at work, she saw Leon pull into the parking lot because he always arrived early so that he could, just talk to his coworkers and, chat a little bit before his work. And she did see him. She noticed that he had not parked in his usual spot because there was another vehicle there. But she didn't take notice of the vehicle. It's one of those things you just don't think it's important at the time. Because he was there early all the time, around 11:40, 11:45, and he would chat with people. She thought that she may have missed him coming in and he was just talking with somebody. But when 12 a.m. came and she hadn't seen them, she was immediately concerned and looked out the window and his car was not there anymore. And that's when she called Leon's brother that he was living with. And so my Uncle George drove the route that Leon goes just to see if maybe something happened, if with his car or whatever. He went all the way to Kroger, went back home. And when he got back home, the coworker called him and said that there was another 911 caller calling about a car accident on that deserted road where Leon was found. And she saw the fire truck pass by at that moment. But again, they just thought it was a car accident. They didn't know that it was Leon's car at the time. And she has felt tremendous guilt because she wished that she had paid more attention to that other vehicle, or that she had noticed him sooner, that he wasn't in the store. And I just tell her, you have nothing to feel guilty about. You didn't know this was going to happen. But it's people like that. Like, she couldn't talk about Leon for years because she felt so much guilt. Just as I felt guilt that I saw him at the parking lot of my job that day and I didn't go back in to talk to him. I've held that regret so deeply for so long. It's one of those things you just think you'll see him tomorrow, and tomorrow doesn't come and you didn't get to talk to him that one last time. And that guilt has eaten at me forever. And until recently, somebody asked me well, would he have gone into the store and not talk to you? Absolutely not. He came to visit me twice a week, every week. And I worked close to the front door, so he would not have come in and not talked to me. So I don't think that he was in the store. We don't know if he had been approached there at the parking lot and taken somewhere. because he wasn't in the store. And they were like, you can't feel guilty because he wasn't there. Even if you had gone back in, you wouldn't have found him. And it wasn't until then that I could feel a little bit more peace with that guilt. As far as me seeing any red flags, no, I didn't, because I knew that Leon was starting to go out, and I just wanted him to enjoy his new life, and I didn't pry. I also was like a single parent with 3 boys and a full-time job. I was just trying to get through my life, you know? But he did mention 2 days prior that the Gatlin brothers were after him, and he was really scared. She didn't let the rest of the family know, so we didn't know about this until after. The cousin that Leon told the state trooper said, I will kill you if I see you with my son. He didn't come forward until afterwards either. And then he did tell a coworker that there were people harassing him and after him, but he didn't know why. So there's people that he did tell, and I didn't know about it. So, you know, it's one of those things that you don't know how serious it is until after. But if I had heard it, I would have known that Leon's not the type of person that talks about, you know, problems or anything like that. And so if he was mentioning it, it was serious, and he was really scared. But I wasn't aware of it at the time. The Gatlin brothers are 2 young guys that were dealing drugs at the time. And they're also well known as people that are not good people. They, you know, deal drugs, have guns, hurt people, and things like that. But they've never really gotten in trouble for any of those things. They still live there to this day, and that's why people are afraid of them and don't speak up, because they are afraid of those people. I feel like Leon probably met them at some party he went to, because, you know, back then in a small town, you usually partied like out at the park or the lake or something like that, because we didn't have clubs. So I feel like they may have met him there, and if they found out that he was gay, that could be a reason why they hated him, because the younger brother was very, very homophobic, and everyone will tell you that. And so I feel like, you know, that could possibly be the reason that they chose to do this. But because it was so well organized, I don't believe they are the ones that orchestrated it. They just, you know, were there to perform the act. And I feel that the sheriff himself had something to do with this, because his son went into the grocery store that night looking for Leon, like frantically looking for Leon. He had never been in there before. He'd never been looking for Leon before. I feel that maybe he was there to warn Leon or to see if Leon was okay. Also, the sheriff's truck was seen behind Leon's car out there on that road where he was found. That truck disappeared right after. Not only that, there was 9 years before, there was a 13-year-old girl that was executed the same way, thrown on the side of the road. She was seen getting into that same pickup right before she was killed. Honestly, I don't remember a whole lot, because it was just so traumatic that I feel that my mind has, you know, protected me by blocking some things out. So I don't remember a whole lot. I remember getting the phone call around 2 a.m. and my cousin just saying Leon's dead. And it's one of those things like you don't think you're understanding correctly. So you say, what? And before she could finish saying it again, I remember just falling to the ground, dropping the phone, and just yelling, no, 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 no. I don't remember exactly what happened after that. I don't remember getting dressed. I don't remember what I did with my kids. I don't remember driving out there. But the next thing I remember is being outside the sheriff's department in the middle of the night. Me, my aunts, and my mom. My Uncle George was the only one that they would speak to. So the rest of us just stood outside for hours, and they wouldn't tell us anything. So I didn't know exactly what happened, just that he was shot. And I remember when daylight broke, someone mentioned that it was in the newspaper. And I was really angry because they hadn't yet told us that he was executed. They just said he was shot. And I was so angry. I literally drove there and went inside and just started yelling at them like this. I'm Leon's family. How dare you put this in the paper before they even tell us this? You know, they were just staring at me. They didn't know what to do about me, but I was just so upset that everyone knows and we hadn't found out yet. And I don't know what I expected them to do. I didn't know what I was doing myself. I just, was angry about that because we hadn't been told. So that's how I found out that he was executed. We were told that his car was set on fire. So they said due to the fire and the water damage, that there would be no evidence. So they immediately removed the car and took it to the junkyard and destroyed it. So there's no evidence, they didn't preserve anything. The sheriff himself had recused himself that very night, yet the next day in the newspaper, he's standing there with all of the other deputies, literally on the spot where Leon's body lay. No booties, no gloves, no evidence bags. The owner of that property is standing there and they're just chatting away and laughing. And I feel that there was no collection of evidence. It wasn't preserved. The site was not preserved. And I don't know what they did. But for years after, you could still see the black spot on the ground where Leon's car had burned. And it was like black burned because there was so much accelerant used. So there was really nothing, but I just wanted to know, maybe the position of the seat would tell you if Leon drove his car there, because Leon was a big person and he had a seat all the way back and reclined, and these guys were short. So if they had driven the car, it would have been in a different position. But they didn't. I don't think they took pictures or anything like that, so we don't know. It was very convenient. And just when you see that picture, and I'm the only one that has that newspaper clipping, because when I went there to yell at the people at the newspaper, I grabbed a whole bunch of newspapers. I don't know why. I just did. And my mom's telling me, oh, you can't do that. You didn't pay for all of those. You didn't pay for them. I don't care. I don't care. I'm angry right now. I don't care. But if you search for it, you can't find these things. Only I have them, and I have put them out there. But the fact that I see them not really trying to investigate, not having any protection gear on, tells me that they didn't really investigate, because Leon was just a throwaway and it didn't matter. And the fact that he recused himself but was there, what does that tell you? He shouldn't have been there. And that's why I feel that there was some involvement. And it was a 911 caller that called in and said they saw that red and white pickup with a flatbed that was behind Leon's car. And that call came in like around 12:20 something. And we searched the DMV records, and the only truck we could find local there was the sheriff that owned that truck. And it has not been sold or anything. From what I know, one 911 caller said that they saw the pickup and they thought that, somebody had, was in trouble or something with their car, and so they reported it. The next caller was a nurse coming from the hospital after her midnight shift, and she called about the car on fire, and she stopped and went to the car thinking that maybe she could rescue somebody out of the car. And that's when she saw Leon's body. And this traumatized her so much. To the very last day that she died, her daughter told me that it weighed on her very heavy because there was nothing she could do for him. And, you know, as a nurse, that's your job. And she wasn't able to do anything for him. So she's the one that called the police, and that they came shortly after that. That's what I want people to know is like when they take somebody's life, it's just not one person or two people that are affected. There's so many people affected. She was traumatized by it. His coworkers were so traumatized. You know, me, our family, his friends, everyone was so affected by this, and we still are to this day. And people don't realize how many people are affected when something like this happens. I feel him with me all the time, and that's why I'm still fighting, because I know Leon would have done it for me. And so even if I don't get justice for him, I'm not going to stop trying. Not at all. I'm not afraid of them. I don't care what happens to me. I'm not going to stop trying, because Leon was a beautiful person, and he deserves to be remembered for who he was, not just what happened, but he also deserves justice. Unfortunately, I don't have much support from family. At the beginning when this happened, Leon was living with his brother George. So it was George and I that were fighting to get answers and to get justice. And 2 weeks went by, and my uncle went to the Texas Ranger and asked, like, what has he, found out, what progress he's made on the investigation. And this Texas Ranger didn't believe in computers. So he just had this little notepad, and he pulled out of his pocket 2 little notes, and that was his investigation. And that was when my uncle came to me and said, we've got to hire somebody else. There's not going to be justice from these people. And so it was supposed to be a family, that pitched in to hire this PI from Dallas that was highly recommended, William Deere. But my mom and my aunts didn't have money. So my uncle put up half of it, and I put up the other half, and I used nearly all of my savings to do this because this was important to me. And the PI was there a couple of weeks, and then he said that the law enforcement in town was so corrupt and they had threatened him, so he was not going to continue. And so at that point, we didn't know what to do. I mean, like, nobody prepares you for this, of course, but we were also very naive, and we trusted in the law enforcement, and we trusted that they would do their jobs. And when they didn't, we didn't really know what to do. And that's when I took to contacting all of the local news and trying to get the story out, but it was almost impossible. They didn't want to cover this story. And I feel like a lot of the reporters, had to get permission from law enforcement. And so if that's the way they were back then, and if they didn't have that permission, they weren't going to cover the story. And so I only had one person come out to my home, and they only interviewed my uncle. For some reason, the women were not important back then. So, we were ignorant. So the man of the family had to talk. And to this day, this lady doesn't remember. I'm like, you went to my house and you sat on my couch, but she doesn't remember me because she did an article for me last year. But that was the only reporter that I could get to cover the story. And every year I would do a visual, and some of the family came, like a couple of the sisters and maybe a cousin or two, but that was all the support that I got. And as far as fighting for justice now, my uncle decided it was too much for him and he couldn't proceed any longer. So it's just been me for, the last 15 years. It's just been me. And for someone who's doesn't know the law or anything like that, it's really hard to try to figure out, who do you turn to? How do I get help? How do I know how to fill out a FOIA request? Because those are the things that, they have to be precise, and I didn't have a clue. So it was a lot of trial and error and asking people for help. And when I turned to the true crime podcast world, those are the people that helped me, told me who to turn to, how to fill out a FOIA request, what to do if, they decline it or whatever. They're the ones that have helped me get this far. They're the ones that helped me, fill out a form at Season of Justice to help me get the billboard and things like that. And I'm so grateful to them. They're like family to me. I love them so much because I know I would not be this far without them. My call to action would be if you would just please follow, like, share the Facebook page, because I think at this point, the only thing that's going to help is getting his story out there and putting pressure on law enforcement to bring someone in to take a look at the case, in a fair way and actually do proper investigation. Because if we don't push for that, it's never going to happen. They refuse to give me the autopsy. They refuse to speak to me. They refuse to give me any information. And so that's all I can do is keep trying to push Leon's story out there, get it some recognition, put some pressure on law enforcement. That's all I know to do right now. I want people to know that Leon was a beautiful human being. He loved everyone, took care of everyone, and he was so special, and people still remember him, just customers, friends, coworkers, and that I lost a piece of my heart that day. And that's something that you don't replace. Time doesn't help. It's still just as painful today as it was that day. And I'm able to talk to him without breaking down now. But after these interviews, I do break down because my heart is still broken. And he's dearly missed. And there's no way to fix that. But I just want him to be known as this beautiful soul that he was. There is a person that contacted me. She said it took a lot of courage and some alcohol in order to tell me this story, that her best friend was dating a guy that was there when Leon was killed. And even though he didn't pull the trigger, it has haunted him so much so that he would wake up in the middle of the night screaming that Leon was haunting him. Leon was there and wouldn't leave him alone. And this happened for years. So he took to drugs and drinking, and he couldn't get rid of Leon's, haunting him. So he turned to the dark side, trying to get rid of Leon's spirit. But it has eaten him up that much, but he won't come forward. And this was the story that this person reached out to me and told me. She knows who did it because he said who did it, but he hasn't come forward. And I understand that it's hard, but it's been 27 years. It's been eating at you for 27 years. It's time for you to just speak up and let us know the name of that person that pulled the trigger. That's the person I want, to get justice for Leon. I don't care that you were there. I don't care about any of that. I just want the person who did this to be brought to justice because Leon deserves justice. And I know that there are other people out there that know the truth, because some people have gone to the sheriff himself and said that the person that did this is bragging and laughing about it at parties. And they have gone to the sheriff himself, and nothing has ever been done about him. There's been multiple people that he has told this to.
Judge Doug Hurt, who at the time was a coroner, has been quoted as saying that he has all of the records, but doesn't remember where they are. How convenient. Additionally, the DA at the time, Michael Murray, has been quoted as saying to the Arlene, quote, "Why would you need the autopsy when you knew what his demise was?" End quote. The mistreatment in this case towards Arlene is exactly what we want to call out. It's behaviors like this that really damages the reputation of those in the higher ups. They are here to serve and protect. It's interesting that we are expected to trust these people who often betray that trust with insensitive remarks and mishandling of information. Arlene has been treated in such a cruel and callous manner, but that will not stop her from the fight.
To this day, Leon's case remains unsolved. The biggest takeaway we want you all to note is that his story needs to be told. His billboard at the time of writing this, which was October 2nd of 2023, still stands thanks to Season of Justice. It's going to be up just a few weeks longer from this day, but with that, his story should remain told and his voice through Arlene Harbison heard. Something is absolutely afoot with this case, and as the saying goes, something in the milk ain't clean.
A quote from Arlene goes, "He was my everything, and now he's gone. It's still just as hard for me as it was that day. He had just turned 30 that January. He was a really big guy, but he was pretty shy. He was more than just a gentle giant teddy bear. He was very caring and giving. He would always buy all of his coworkers birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, take them shopping, take them out to eat." End quote.
When listening to that quote, think of the person in your life that does that for you. What would you do? Because to this very day, nobody has come forward with information leading to an arrest in his case. And we understand that fear is likely a motivating factor, but we urge anyone who has any information to please contact the Brown County Sheriff's Office at 325-646-5510 or the Heart of Texas Crime Stoppers at 800-222-TIPS. That's 800-222-8477. Also, we want to urge anyone who can lead Arlene and her family to an official autopsy report to do so. There are doubts about it after all, as the official autopsy report has been withheld, but a family desperately seeking justice in the murder of their beloved deserves to know the truth. We also urge any other true crime podcasters, media, etc. to please reach out to Arlene Harbison and continue talking about Leon. Please join the Justice for Leon Laureles Facebook group, and please donate to the GoFundMe for a PI in his unsolved death, all which will be listed in the show notes.
Juan Leon Laureles was a bee. He was strong and resilient. Yet, being a gay Hispanic man in the mid-90s, in a small conservative town, he was vulnerable. Someone took advantage of his vulnerability and murdered him. Arlene Harbison, his niece and survivor, speaking on behalf of Leon, is also a bee. Strong, resilient, yet vulnerable. In the eyes of the law, who takes advantage of her in so many ways, ignoring her pleas for help and justice. We must respect and protect bees at all costs. For without bees, we as a human race will not survive and thrive in life. So be vigilant, for when you mess with the bees,
you get the hive.
Thank you for listening to A Nefarious Nightmare. Music used in the theme was originally by Ghost Stories Incorporated, remixed by Ryan RCX Murphy. Additional background music is provided by Epidemic Sound. A Nefarious Nightmare is scripted, researched, and produced by Courtney Fenner and Amanda Cronin. I'm Lainey Hobbs, and as always, be vigilant, for when you mess with the bees, you get the hive.